is lesson 11, day 1, page 117. We're working on the example problem, which reads, Ricky and his brother Lorenzo both have to practice for an upcoming karate tournament. Ricky practices for 3/8 of an hour and Lorenzo practices for 3/4 of an hour. Which brother practices for a longer time? Okay, so that's our example question. We see that Ricky practices for 3/8 of an hour, and we see that Lorenzo practices for 3/4 of an hour. Okay. Now on our example problem, they are showing us a way to use a number line to check for this. And they're recommending that we compare both numbers to the benchmark fraction of 1/2. So on our number line here we have 1/2. And Ricky practices for 3/8 of an hour. Well, let's see where 3/8 is. They've already shown us that it's over here, but let's talk about why here's 3/8. We have a number line with 0 to 1, which 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's broken up into 8 equal sections, and Ricky practices for 3/8 of an hour. But let's talk about Lorenzo, who practices for 3/4 of an hour. Because what I'm seeing here is that this 3/4 is over here, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 6 eighths. But we know that that's equivalent to 3/4, and let's talk about why. Because if we were to break this number line up into fourths instead of eighths, let's use pink for this. If I was breaking up into fourths, here I would have 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and of course 4/4 is the same thing as 1. But these are equal sections. Here we have the first section, second section, third section, and fourth section. So 3/4 is equivalent to 6/8. Okay, well, now that we've talked about the number line and where they are on the number line, let's look at it comparing the two numbers to find out which brother practices for a longer time. We see that 3/8 is less than 1/2. Here's 1/2 and 3/8 is less than. So 3/8 is less than 1/2. But 3/4 is greater than 1/2. So since we know that 3/8 is less than 1/2 and 3/4 is greater than 1/2, we can reason that 3/8 is less than 3/4. And therefore, 3/4 is greater than 3/8. And since we're looking for the brother that practices for a longer time, we see that the brother who practices for 3/4 of an hour practices for a longer time than the brother who practices for 3/8. And that brother is Lorenzo practices for 3/4 of an hour. Lorenzo practices for a longer time. If you're watching this video, please write the word video after that word example.